Welcome back. Let's try finish what I'm reading. I got a break and did eat a little food. It's very hot in my apartment, but it's always like 30 degrees. It's 30 degrees in the daytime, 25 in the night. I think I should try finish reading what I'm reading. So it's soon 1 p.m. I'm waiting for this sun to go down, like 7 or 8 p.m. So I'll just read my whole day till the sun goes down.
Tullio. Concepts operating in X-band or below must have effective transmitter diameters measured in kilometers to achieve a fine enough beam to follow a vehicle Tullio. The transmitters are too large to fit on mobile platforms, and so microwave-powered rockets are constrained to launch near fixed beam director sites. Nuclear thermal, edit. Type description advantages disadvantages. Radioisotope rocket / Poodle thruster, radioactive decay energy. Heat from radioactive decay is used to heat hydrogen about 700-800 seconds. Almost no moving parts, low thrust / weight ratio. Nuclear thermal rocket, nuclear fission energy. Propellant, typically hydrogen, is passed through a nuclear reactor to heat to high temperature. ISP can be high, perhaps 900 seconds or more, above unity thrust / weight ratio. With some designs, maximum temperature is limited by materials technology. Some radioactive particles can be present in exhaust in some designs. Nuclear reactor shielding is heavy, unlikely to be permitted from surface of the Earth. Thrust / weight ratio is not high. Nuclear, edit. Nuclear propulsion includes a wide variety of propulsion methods that use some form of nuclear reaction as their primary power source. Various types of nuclear propulsion have been proposed, and some of them tested, for spacecraft applications. Type description advantages disadvantages. Gas core reactor rocket, nuclear fission energy, nuclear reaction using a gaseous state fission reactor in intimate contact with propellant. Very hot propellant, not limited by keeping reactor solid. ISP between 1500 and 3000 seconds, but with very high thrust. Difficulties in heating propellant without losing fissionables in exhaust. Massive thermal issues, particularly for nozzle / throat region. Exhaust almost inherently highly radioactive. Nuclear light bulb variants can contain fissionables, but cut ISP in half. Fission fragment rocket, nuclear fission energy. Fission products are directly exhausted to give thrust. Theoretical only at this point. Fission sail, nuclear fission energy. A sail material is coated with fissionable material on one side. No moving parts, works in deep space. Theoretical only at this point. Nuclear saltwater rocket, nuclear fission energy. Nuclear salts are held in solution, caused to react at nozzle. Very high ISP, very high thrust. Thermal issues in nozzle. Propellant could be unstable, highly radioactive exhaust. Theoretical only at this point. Nuclear pulse propulsion, exploding fission / fusion bombs. Shaped nuclear bombs are detonated behind vehicle and blast is caught by a pusher plate. Very high ISP, very high thrust / weight ratio. No showstoppers are known for this technology. Never been tested. Pusher plate may throw off fragments due to shock. Minimum size for nuclear bombs is still pretty big. Expensive at small scales. Nuclear treaty issues. Fallout when used below Earth's magnetosphere. Antimatter catalyzed nuclear pulse propulsion. Fission and / or fusion energy. Nuclear pulse propulsion with antimatter assist for smaller bombs. Smaller sized vehicle might be possible containment of antimatter. Production of antimatter in macroscopic quantities is not currently feasible. Theoretical only at this point. Fusion rocket, nuclear fusion energy. Fusion is used to heat propellant very high exhaust velocity largely beyond current state of the art. Antimatter rocket, annihilation energy. Antimatter annihilation heats propellant extremely energetic. Very high theoretical exhaust velocity problems with antimatter production and handling, energy losses in neutrinos, gamma rays, muons, thermal issues. Theoretical only at this point. History of rocket engines, edit. Main article, History of rockets. According to the writings of the Roman Aulus Gellius, the earliest known example of jet propulsion was in c. 400 BC, when a Greek Pythagorean named Archytas propelled a wooden bird along wires using steam. However, it was not powerful enough to take off under its own thrust. The Aeolipile described in the 1st century BC, often known as Hero's engine, consisted of a pair of steam rocket nozzles mounted on a bearing. It was created almost 2 millennia before the Industrial Revolution, but the principles behind it were not well understood, and it was not developed into a practical power source. The availability of black powder to propel projectiles was a precursor to the development of the first solid rocket. 9th century Chinese Taoist alchemists discovered black powder in a search for the elixir of life. This accidental discovery led to fire arrows, which were the first rocket engines to leave the ground. It is stated that the reactive forces of incendiaries were probably not applied to the propulsion of projectiles prior to the 13th century. A turning point in rocket technology emerged with a short manuscript entitled Liber Igneum ad Comburem dos Hosts, abbreviated as the Book of Fires. The manuscript is composed of recipes for creating incendiary weapons from the mid-8th to the end of the 13th centuries, 2 of which are rockets. The first recipe calls for 1 part of colophonium and sulfur added to 6 parts of saltpeter, potassium nitrate, dissolved in laurel oil, then inserted into hollow wood and lit to fly away suddenly to whatever place you wish and burn up everything. The second recipe combines 1 pound of sulfur, 2 pounds of charcoal, and 6 pounds of saltpeter, all finely powdered on a marble slab. This powder mixture is packed firmly into a long and narrow case. The introduction of saltpeter into pyrotechnic mixtures connected the shift from hurled Greek fire into self-propelled rocketry. Articles and books on the subject of rocketry appeared increasingly from the 15th through 17th centuries. In the 16th century, German military engineer Konrad Haas, 1509–1576, wrote a manuscript which introduced the construction of multi-staged rockets. Rocket engines were also put in use by Tipu Sultan, the king of Mysore. These usually consisted of a tube of soft hammered iron about 8 in, 20 centimeters, long and 1.3 in, 3.87.6 centimeter, diameter, closed at one end, packed with black powder propellant and strapped to a shaft of bamboo about 4 feet, 120 centimeters, long. A rocket carrying about 1 pound of powder could travel almost 1,000 yards, 910 m. These rockets, fitted with swords, would travel several meters in the air before coming down with sword edges facing the enemy. These were used very effectively against the British Empire. Modern rocketry, edit. Slow development of this technology continued up to the later 19th century, when Russian Konstantin Tsiolkovsky first wrote about liquid-fueled rocket engines. He was the first to develop the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation, though it was not published widely for some years. The modern solid and liquid-fueled engines became realities early in the 20th century, thanks to the American physicist Robert Goddard. Goddard was the first to use a de Laval nozzle on a solid propellant, gunpowder, rocket engine, doubling the thrust and increasing the efficiency by a factor of about 25. This was the birth of the modern rocket engine. He calculated from his independently derived rocket equation that a reasonably sized rocket, using solid fuel, could place a 1-pound payload on the moon. The era of liquid fuel rocket engines, edit. Goddard began to use liquid propellants in 1921, and in 1926 became the first to launch a liquid-fueled rocket. Goddard pioneered the use of the de Laval nozzle, lightweight propellant tanks, small light turbopumps, thrust vectoring, the smoothly throttled liquid fuel engine, regenerative cooling, and curtain cooling. During the late 1930s, German scientists, such as Wernher von Braun and Helmuth Walter, investigated installing liquid-fueled rockets in military aircraft, Heinkel He-112, He-111, He-176 and Messerschmitt Me-163. The turbopump was employed by German scientists in World War II. Until then, cooling the nozzle had been problematic, and the A-4 ballistic missile used dilute alcohol for the fuel, which reduced the combustion temperature sufficiently. Staged combustion was first proposed by Aleksey Izhev in 1949. The first staged combustion engine was the S-1.5400 used in the Soviet planetary rocket, designed by Melnikov, a former assistant to Izhev. About the same time, 1959, Nikolai Kuznetsov began work on the closed-cycle engine NK-9 for Korolev's orbital ICBM, GR-1. Kuznetsov later evolved that design into the NK-15 and NK-33 engines for the unsuccessful Luna N-1 rocket. In the West, the first laboratory staged combustion test engine was built in Germany in 1963, by Ludwig Belkow. Liquid hydrogen engines were first successfully developed in America. The RL-10 engine first flew in 1962. Its successor, the Rocketdyne J2, was used in the Apollo program's Saturn V rocket to send humans to the moon. The high specific impulse and low density of liquid hydrogen lowered the upper stage mass and the overall size and cost of the vehicle. The record for most engines on one rocket flight is 44, set by NASA in 2016 on a Black Grant. See also, edit. 1. Comparison of orbital rocket engines. 2. Rotating detonation engine. 3. Jet damping, an effect of the exhaust jet of a rocket that tends to slow a vehicle's rotation speed. 4. Model rocket motor classification lettered engines. 5. NERVA, nuclear energy for rocket vehicle applications, a U.S. nuclear thermal rocket program. 6. Photon rocket. 7. Project Prometheus, NASA development of nuclear propulsion for long-duration spaceflight, begun in 2003. 8. Rocket propulsion technologies, disambiguation. Notes, edit.
Good. I did finish reading. I was supposed to make some video in English about it, and then it's 1 p.m. But I have given up do that now because I'm living my life in a greenhouse, 30 degrees. It's always 25 or 30 degrees in my apartment, and makes me very sleepy and thirsty because of the heating, and I have this problem with my debt the last 9 years that give me a lot of stress, and I'm going to get my Danish pension tomorrow, and Monday I have to pay bills. So this problem with my money give me a lot of stress. And then I have the heating, and now I'm getting older, soon age 60. and my gain a lot of body weight. My body weight get up and up and up. My body weight are getting up every month. So I will just charge the camcorder, then read something else, space. So just like I'm waiting for the sun go down so the temperature drops to 25 degrees.